Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today I am so excited to be here. I want to thank my producer Natalie for this one. Natalie is one of my Patreon members. She got to pick what we watch and she chose Karate Kid, one of my favorite 80s movies, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So the idea is we're going to watch Karate Kid 1 and Karate Kid 2. Then we're going to move on to Cobra Kai, and I got to be honest, I am so looking forward to that. I've heard such good things about it. I've heard a lot of you guys in the comments saying you really want to talk about it, so we're going to jump into that. But first, let's get into Karate Kid, the 1984 movie. I could not do this one without my favorite co-host, my favorite, lovely assistant, my husband Jay. He is a huge 80s movies buff, and he's wearing a headband as we speak. So thank you so much for being here, Jay.
Thanks for having me. This one is a special movie to me because I had a friend growing up that was obsessed with karate, I believe because of this movie. So I watched it a lot on VHS, and I guess it was one of the first VHS rentals that really blew up. It came out in like 85, so that's like right when that was really starting to take off and Blockbuster was everywhere.
But the question that we're dying to know is, did you ever take karate, and do you have a sweet red leather jacket like the one in the movie?
I think I did briefly take karate, but I never stuck with it. Though, being married to me, you should know I do have a sweet red leather jacket, and that's a real thing. Actually, I have two. I have that snakeskin one also that is from like college. But also in college, I did take jiu-jitsu, not karate, but made plenty of references and jokes to this movie, when I train in the evenings.
So we were 4 when this movie came out, but I've since grown to absolutely love it. I watched it a million times. I was pretty young the first time I watched it, but my connection to the movie, Elisabeth Shue, I love Elisabeth Shue. I always think about during I think it was my senior prom, when you go get your hair done. I took a picture of Elisabeth Shue with me because she had this beautiful curly hair, and I wanted that for the prom. So that's what sticks with me there. So that's my connection to Karate Kid, ? I don't know. But yeah, let's get into this movie. Again, a huge thank you to Natalie for choosing this. You're my producer on this one, and I'm so glad you picked this. You just don't even know. We've had the best time watching it, and now I can't wait to talk about it for about 14 hours. If you're interested in Patreon, do check that out. We have all different tiers. The top tier gets to pick what we watch and discuss. So check that out if that's something you're interested in. Let's get into this movie.
Hey, just to interject, beep, 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 breaking news. So I've got some notes in front of me, aka Wikipedia, and I just happened to glance at the very bottom and totally missed this. They are adapting this movie into a Broadway musical, which is premiering at May 25th this year, which is near your birthday, so act surprised.
Holy crap, no way. I would absolutely love that. Let's all meet up and go see Karate Kid. Did you say it was a musical?
Karate Kid the musical.
Karate Kid the musical. I really want to do some karate moves while I dance around. Kind of like Mac from Always Sunny. Okay, I promise we are going to get into the movie, but I really found the behind-the-scenes stuff as fascinating as I found the movie. So I just want to talk about a couple of things before we actually go into the different scenes. First of all, love Ralph Macchio. I've seen interviews of him. He just seems like such a nice guy. I found out he, in real life, named his son Daniel because of this character. I thought that was so cool. Now, did you know that Ralph Macchio was 22 years old during this filming? I was shocked. I told Jay, we both thought he looked like, 12 years old when he was filming this thing. I couldn't even believe it. The crew didn't even believe that he was 22. They would ask him to prove his age, basically. I thought that was really interesting. There was some interesting stuff about, did you know that the guy that plays Mr. Miyagi, Pat, he designed the bonsai logo. That's so cool to me. I just thought that was a neat thing that they let him do that, and they ended up sewing it into Daniel's outfit. I thought that was pretty cool. William Zabka, so he, of course, plays the bad guy Johnny. Now, one of my other favorite 80s movies is Back to School. I just love that movie. I watch it every couple years. It's Rodney Dangerfield. It's so much fun. He plays the bad guy Chaz on that, and they're very similar in personality and tone and character. They're just kind of the asshole, right? With that hair. Yeah, they're just a lot of fun stuff. Behind the scenes of this one, I'm very excited to talk about. I'll talk about it as the movie goes on. There's just, so much to talk about. Oh, Elisabeth Shue. Again, I love her. She interrupted her studies at Harvard to be in this movie. How crazy is that? So I just love learning this stuff. So I'll share it as we go on. As we find behind the scenes stuff, I will continue to mention it.
So picking up, this movie starts out pretty quickly, like no real introduction of characters or anything. It's just like, oh, hey, these two voices are moving from East Coast to West Coast for some reason that I don't think ever gets addressed now that I think about it. But first part's like a road trip, and then they just immediately roll up to an apartment that they somehow procured. Don't know how that worked in the 80s. Everything looks very 80s. And I think Jen told me as she was looking things up for this movie, they actually shot this movie like scene by scene chronologically, which usually doesn't happen because they got to secure locations and things, and so everything's shot out of order. But this is actually shot sequentially, which is unusual.
You know, I love that trivia behind the scenes. So yeah, it was shot chronologically. I thought that was so interesting. The other interesting thing, I left that Columbia Pictures picture in there because to remind myself. So at the time, it was owned by Coca-Cola, and so that's why you see a bunch of Coke products in the movie. Ralph Macchio was against it. He would try to hide logos, but they'd make him go back and shoot it. There's a Sprite logo in his hand. I think it was when he was with, I don't know, one of the times he was with Mr. Miyagi. He tried to hide it. They made him go back and refilm it. He even says Minute Maid in one of his lines because, again, it was owned by Coca-Cola. So as we're watching these opening scenes, I said, oh my God, I think she looks familiar. So she is Frances Bay, the lady with the dog sitting there talking to Daniel and his mom. She is from Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, we both noticed that, and we were like, ha, she even looked old then, and then I realized, oh wait, Happy Gilmore only came out about 10 years after this, so wow.
Gosh, don't say things like that. It makes me feel old. Yeah, so like Jay said, it's one of those things watching as an adult, you kind of pick up on these things. They didn't explain why they were moving out west, but they were. No explanation where his dad was. It's just he and his mom. He goes to this new place, immediately makes a best friend, like within 1 minute of being there.
Yeah, this movie knows what it is. He immediately kicks him through a door and they're best friends. We don't need any exposition. That's something I miss from movies and TV in general. It's like things on TV now. It's like I just want to watch a talent show. I want to see somebody juggle the chainsaws. I don't even know about the trail of dead bodies behind them that led them on the stage. Anyways, so the apartment immediately has a problem. The faucet's broken. So Daniel's mom sends him to find the handyman, who he goes to the apartment and stumbles on his workshop, and that's where we meet Mr. Miyagi. And he tells him, he explains what's wrong. He says he'll fix it.
So this is where we meet Mr. Miyagi, played by Pat Morita. I love him. He's one of my favorite people in the movie. He's fantastic. So he was, 55? 52 when they made this movie. Can you believe that? Holy crap. So anytime you see him trying to catch this fly, just so you know, it was a prop. It was tied, obviously, to, as a little fake fly, tied with fishing line and being moved around by a crew member.
Yeah, so Arnold has seen some happier days. He's gone from running his restaurant to eating flies from the garage. But not really. That's a Happy Days joke I had to throw in there. Thank you.
Okay, so since we're still doing trivia, I love this stuff. Guess who turned down the role of Daniel? I'll give you a hint. He's got tiger blood. Charlie Sheen. He turned it down to go be in something called, Grizzly 2. Whoopsies.
So jumping back to this movie, not wasting any time, not even finished unpacking from his cross-country drive, or having slept, that I recall, he and his new best friend that he made 10 seconds ago immediately go to the beach, and they're having a beach party with lots of people, and all kinds of hijinks ensue. You meet the girl of the story, and then shortly after, you meet her jealous ex, who's the big douche of the story.
So again, more about Elisabeth Shue. So she actually was a soccer player. She ended up giving it up to pursue more gymnastics, but she was very familiar with soccer. Hence, you see her playing a lot of soccer in this movie. Yeah, so we see him at the beach meeting his love interest, Allie. So this movie was actually filmed in California. I was curious, so I looked it up. It was around Calabasas, Malibu mostly. His apartment was in Malibu. Woodland Hills, Los Angeles, and then, of course, some of the driving scenes we saw across country. We got to see Phoenix and Oak Creek Canyon and Sedona.
So the story keeps moving quickly. Girl likes Daniel, Daniel likes girl. They start to hit it off in a teenagery way, and then the douchey boyfriend appears and his gang, and they are a big bunch of douches that do douchey things. And basically, he gets jealous. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like you see him interacting with his ex, and it's just like they're not getting back together, and they shouldn't. He's a fucking monster. And then he beats the shit out of Daniel, which is a recurring theme in this movie, as you will learn. But Johnny, the ex-boyfriend villain person in the sweet red leather jacket, he's played by William Zabka, who apparently had a wrestling background, no karate background, but this movie did lead him into pursuing that, and he achieved like a green belt maybe. And he's still around in the Cobra Kai TV series now also.
Yeah, so his new love of his life has to see him get the shit kicked out of him. She tries to help. He doesn't want it. Next day, second day in California, right? His mom's like, show me your beautiful brown eyes. His mom is played, it's Lucille. She's played by Randy Heller. She's like, show me those eyes. And he's like, Ma. But he ends up taking off his sunglasses. She realizes he has a black eye. He gives her some line about hitting his head on the curb. A lot to do with riding this bike. That we see a lot of scenes with the bike. And I found out the bike actually became super popular after this movie. They sold a lot of them because I guess everybody wanted to ride a bike like Daniel.
Oh yeah, that was totally a thing in the 80s. BMX was hot shit. I think myself and about every friend I had, we had, some kind of BMX bike or whatever with the pegs on the back so you can do sweet tricks and hops all around the place. So yeah, it fit. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to see some of those hot tricks you speak of. I don't believe I've seen those.
So then, just because it's a movie made in the 80s, we're treated to a gratuitous shirtless scene full of boys. Because lots of directors have become known for being problematic, and now we know better.
Yep, so after that, we go back to Daniel's house. Mr. Miyagi finally comes over to fix the sink. He notices Daniel's black eye. Daniel's being vague about it, and thus starts the dance around, oh shit, Daniel's getting bullied.
Yeah, this starts the pattern of Daniel being bullied and getting in fights and getting his ass handed to him in said fights. And Mr. Miyagi notices more, and this is kind of where their relationship starts to converge, along with his relationship with Elisabeth Shue. She's into him, but they can't be together because Johnny keeps being a dick.
Okay, so speaking of asshole, this is where we get to meet Kreese. He's the bad sensei. He's played by Martin Kove, and he's the one training Johnny and his little asshole buddies, well, to be fighty assholes. But it's just a totally different style. He's very intense. He's very, angry, mean. Everything that Mr. Miyagi is not. And, I just kept saying he looks like David Hasselhoff and Val Kilmer had a baby, and that baby is Kreese. So I did read a little bit about him behind the scenes. He says that a lot of people still come up to him and say that they love to hate him.
Yeah, very intense dude. Probably not doing the best direction on these children. But, it scrolls past, it implies he's a Vietnam vet, so obviously he's seen some shit. I'm sure he's full of emotion, rightfully so, full of anger. Probably not directing it in the most productive way. Maybe should take a page out of Rambo's book. Very angry, but, a little more productive in his expression of rage.
All right, so Daniel is having lunch dinner with his mom, Lucille, again played by Randy Heller. If she looks familiar, she's been in a bunch of stuff. She's in Cobra Kai, of course. She was in Wilfred, if you ever watched that. She was Margot. She was in Modern Family. She played Rita. She was in Felicity, which I absolutely love. She played a psychiatrist in that. But yeah, so we get to see more of his relationship with his mom. They seem super close. He's filling her in on this Allie girl that he likes. We can see the jerkwads across the street. P.S. I love her hair. 80s. Very 80s. I'm going to go do my hair like that. No, but we see the jerks across the street through the window. You can see them kind of like getting ready to make fun of Daniel. They've spotted him in the window, which leads into the next scene.
So this being an early 80s low-budget movie, I don't believe any special effects were really used, if any. So I noticed in that dinner scene the whole time, and I assume this was without green screen, like the right across from the Bad Dojo, and Johnny and all his friends come walking out, and they can see them clearly in the window, and they go into full Three Stooges, like dance around, planning to fuck him up mode, and they're running around like the sidewalk across the street the whole time, and I'm like, wow, how many takes did that take? If they screwed up in the restaurant, they had to do all that over again, unless they used green screen, which I don't think they did. So I was kind of impressed by that.
So it's funny that you mentioned this. That's one of the things I read too is no, they did not use green screen and they did not close down roads. So when you see cars drive by and like there's a scene where Daniel and Mr. Miyagi are trying to cross the road, but they're dodging cars, that was actually happening. They didn't close anything. They actually had to dodge the cars and watch out.
So the story progresses along again with Daniel getting his ass kicked again. To really, if you haven't figured it out yet, these are bullies, and they're not nice, and they keep beating him up.
I know, right? I turned to Jay and said, like, hasn't he only been in town for like a day, and already he's had the shit kicked out of him like 14 times, and now he's kicked down a hill?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not from a big town, but don't most areas have curfew laws, like 16, 17-year-olds are just allowed to run wild on dirt bikes all the time? In the wee hours, I don't know, but whatever. It's a movie. So anyway, Daniel gets home. His mom sees he's had the shit kicked out of him again, so she's concerned. She keeps thinking he's on drugs because I guess if you do drugs, you get beat up.
So he's having the tough conversation with his mom about the mean boys and the tough stuff going on in his life. Again, he's only been in town for a day, but we get shown the door of Mr. Miyagi's place, and it's implied that he's been overheard. So Mr. Miyagi to the rescue.
Yeah, so Mr. Miyagi hears all that, just kind of, makes that known. And next day at school, Daniel's, back, haha, girl stuff. And then comes in contact with Johnny, and he's kind of gotten to the point where he's just going to avoid him and run away. And that doesn't sit well with Allie. And that's where we're at right now. And then Daniel gets home and realizes somebody has fixed his bike, which we learned was Mr. Miyagi. So that's a solid bro move there, Mr. Miyagi. That's how they continue forming their bond.
So side note on Mr. Miyagi / Pat Morita, he didn't actually speak like that in real life. He did not have that accent. It would be considered problematic today, but it was the 80s, I guess. From here, they end up going to a Halloween party because, again, he's been there, this is his third day, so why wouldn't he go to another party? He's dressed like a shower curtain, and it makes me laugh because it very much brought up the 80s for me. I remember when this was a thing, people would dress like this. He decided to grow a pair and squirt the bad skeleton / Johnny with a water hose, sure, and then has to take off running for his life.
Yeah, how many Halloween costumes has everybody been to where somebody's dressed as one of the skeletons? I can think of a shitload that I've been to. Even it was recent as 10 years ago. I kind of stopped going to Halloween parties when I hit my 30s, but lots of skeletons is what I'm getting at. So anyway, chaos ensues. I guess they didn't close this road down either, so I guess that car wreck was real. They run through traffic, and I'm joking. They run through traffic, and all the skeletons are pissed. they're really going to beat shit out of him this time. And Daniel almost makes it all the way home. He gets right to the fence, and they pull him down, and Johnny really starts beating the shit out of him this time. So bad that Mr. Miyagi catches wind of it, and he jumps the fence and defends Daniel, beats up some teenagers. The dream that all adults have.
So it is funny rewatching this as a grown-up and thinking about things like that. Like, oh yeah, he was really close friends with a grown-up, and that's a little weird, huh? But I remembered that Mr. Miyagi came to his defense and ended up saving his rear against all these, tough kids. But I did not remember that Daniel didn't realize it was Mr. Miyagi. When he came to after this, he asked who Spider-Man, or where Spider-Man was, meaning like who's the guy that saved him, and Mr. Miyagi has to tell him, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that. That actually really threw me off because in the previous scene when he hosed Johnny in the bathroom, there was a Spider-Man. Somebody was dressed as Spider-Man in there, and I'm like, why the hell is Daniel so focused on this Spider-Man? I mean, for 1984, that was a pretty sweet-ass Spider-Man costume, pre-MCU and all. But then I realized, because he climbed the fence.
So Mr. Miyagi makes him some of his magic healing tea, which, by the way, I want some of that. I love tea. Give me that magic healing tea. It brings Daniel back around and magically cures him because he was pretty beaten, and then he was magically okay. But he decides he's going to take Daniel to the bad dojo, I guess, Kreese's place, and try to confront him and Johnny and all the, what do you call them, Tuffians, and try to make him see what they're doing is not right.
Yeah, the whole exposition there is weird. They show up with a peace offering. The sensei, for some reason, is in control of the Johnny's life and says no. And anyway, the idea is that then let's have a fight at the upcoming karate tournament, because why not? That's how we resolve conflicts. And the terms are Daniel will train for the karate tournament, but they have to leave him alone until then, which they all agree. They all agree to those terms, and if he doesn't show, then they're going to harass the hell out of him. But you know he's going to show.
So here's a good point or time to fill in some more bit of trivia, because I just love this stuff. Do you know how Miyagi calls him Daniel-san? I just assumed it was like part of his language affectation, whatever you want to call it. But no, it has to do with the Japanese language. Jay, you speak a little Japanese, so correct me if I'm wrong. But in Japanese, it's kind of they're akin to Mr. or Sir. It's used to address one's elders or social superiors. It's not something an older man would typically use to address his teenage students. Those would be something like kun, K-U-N, or chan. So he's saying it almost mockingly, like Daniel-san, just as they give a nod to this when Kreese calls Johnny Mr. Lawrence. It's kind of the same thing, like you wouldn't traditionally be addressing your teenage student that way.
Ah, so desu ka. Daigaku ni Nihongo o benkou shimashita. So yeah, in college I studied Japanese. That's what I said. And that's correct. Daniel-san, I didn't really think about that not being common knowledge, but yeah. So that's like a title, usually to a superior or an equal. It's actually kind of rude to, unless you're close friends, to just say a person's name. They usually put some kind of qualifier on it. Like Jim was just saying, like usually if it's a younger boy, they'll be like Daniel-kun, and if it's like Allie, the girl, will be like Allie-chan. Yeah, so that's some Japanese culture.
And here's more dodging traffic. Again, this was not shut down. This was just how they filmed it across the street. Surprising to see Daniel walk backwards because they actually were dodging traffic here.
So from here, we see Mr. Miyagi's real home. As we were watching this, I was like, I don't remember him living in such a shithole in the basement of the apartment complex, but that's just his workshop. This is his real home, which is apparently a junkyard. I'm a little confused on that also, but, despite the location, pretty cool house. He's got all kinds of classic cars. I'm down with that. And this is where the training starts, which, strikes Daniel as odd because it seems like he's just doing manual labor rather than training for karate.
Yeah, so this is where the famous wax on, wax off scene takes place. So he doesn't realize it yet. It's part of his training. He thinks, again, like Jay was saying, he's just doing menial labor. Okay, so back to my facts. So Helen Hunt and Demi Moore were also considered for the role of Allie. Elisabeth Shue was kind of becoming known around that time because she did a Burger King commercial that became pretty popular in the early 1980s. The film marks the debut role, though, for her and for William Zabka. That was their first big role.
So now Daniel has the ability to hang around in school and not have the shit kicked out of him because of the ceasefire until the tournament. So he's hanging out with Allie, and then the goons come up on him, and it looks like they're going to start something, but he gets a teacher nearby and kind of talks him into expounding on a lecture that they just had. So, dumb jocks are dumb, get it? They didn't want to hear it, so they kind of disappear, and Daniel lives to fight another day.
Okay, so Daniel goes to pick up Allie for a date. We see a huge disparity between the way he's living versus the way she lives. She's in this huge fancy house, very snooty parents. So the mom, I looked up her name and now I can find it again, but she's only been credited in this movie. The dad, His name is William Bassett. If you're into video games, he did voices in things like Fallout 3, Metal Gear Solid, different things like that. So you've probably heard him. He even was he played a cab driver in Arrested Development, and he played a mover in Reno 911. So they end up going to the arcade, and I told Jay this is somewhere I would love to go. This slide looks like so much fun to me. The real location is called Golf and Stuff. That's the name. It opened in 1969 on Firestone Boulevard. It's in Norwalk, California. There's an old 18-hole mini golf course that is still original, along with an arcade and a few rides.
Yeah, this place looks pretty awesome. It's exactly what I would have wanted in my town as a kid in the 80s. And we can definitely go there after I take you to the musical in a few months. So after this, we cut back to Mr. Miyagi's house. He's got some more chores for Daniel, and we didn't really mention it in the last scene with them together that they have an arrangement that Daniel can't question anything about what Mr. Miyagi has him doing, which, again, it just appears like he's just acquired a free labor workhorse. But as you see him work, I mean, obviously he's doing all kinds of arm stuff. He's up to something. This is training in disguise, which we later learn more about.
But they have to show Daniel as a petulant teenager, so of course he's just pissy about it all. He thinks he's just being made to do all these menial tasks around the house.
I thought I had to myself as I was watching this, those car detailing places all over the, every town ever. Like, is it just full of badasses that are either unaware of their power or so aware of it that they have to keep it restrained with their car detailing? I don't want to find out. Anyways, we go inside to Mr. Miyagi's house, and he's trying to catch flies with chopsticks. And he tells Daniel, if a man can catch a fly with chopsticks, he can do anything. So Daniel's like, hey, I'll try. And pretty much immediately catches a fly, which kind of annoys Mr. Miyagi, who's been trying to do this for a while. But it lets us know that Daniel can do anything, including paint a fence. So he gets some more manual labor. Obviously, you can tell Mr. Miyagi's instructing him a very specific way of doing these things. So, that's going to come up later. But for right now, he's just painting a shitload of fence.
Yep, and for anybody thinking of starting trouble with me, just know that I've painted our kitchen, so I could probably kick the shit out of anyone. Okay, let's take a minute and talk about the bonsai of it all. It's just something that reoccurs in this movie. It's something we see a lot. It's something that was very popular in the 80s. Jay and I were talking about, both of our grandparents had bonsai trees, we figured out, which is kind of funny. But it's something that people take very seriously. I did some research into this. Do you know that bonsai scissors, yes, there are special scissors for doing bonsai, they can range anywhere from $35 to $35,000. Let that sink in. For bonsai scissors. So he's tasked with painting the house. We see him get mad, kick things around. He ends up doing it. It's supposed to be done left to right. And he's just getting pissy about it. I mean, he doesn't, he feels like he's just doing these menial tasks. He doesn't understand the big picture. Mr. Miyagi's being very vague about it. And this is where we finally see Daniel start to question things, which he is not supposed to do.
So this is where Daniel starts to get really pissy, and they have a little bit of a confrontation, and Mr. Miyagi decides, all right, well, I got to show him why we're doing this. So he starts throwing punches and basically showing Daniel that he's developing a muscle memory reaction due to the hand motion. So he's blocking punches and kicks, and then Daniel's like, oh, shit, he is training me. And he kind of calms down and, does a good job on the fence. So from there, we end up on the beach again for some beach training. Daniel in his sweet jorts goes running into the ocean, I guess to fight some waves. And he notices Mr. Miyagi in the distance doing the crane kick on a stump on the beach. And as we watched it, I've noticed, I even thought, I doubt that's actually Pat Morita doing that. And thanks to the advent of HD and having a 65-inch TV, I could tell his head looked very fucked up in the distance. They kept it far enough away, but something was off. But it's actually the fight choreographer, Daryl Vadell. He's in some of the scenes at the end in the karate tournament. But he was doubling as Pat in this scene, doing the crane kick. So they finish up on the beach, and some rednecks are hanging out drinking on Mr. Miyagi's truck, because why not? actually turn out to be kind of assholes and also not being very nice to him. But rather than directly confront them, he karate chops their beer bottles' necks off, which scares the shit out of them, and they clean it up. Which is a trope in a lot of video games. I don't know if that's the beer bottle karate chop is a thing, or if this is what started it. But there's a lot of bonus stages where you got to chop some beer bottles in half, and I was like, oh shit, that must be where it originated.
So from here, we get a lesson about balance. We get to see Daniel standing on the bow of the boat. And what was funny is Mr. Miyagi said something about bowing. Daniel didn't understand, so he starts to bow to Mr. Miyagi. And he's like, no. Stand up on the boat. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is my worst nightmare. I would not even be able to stand for 1 second on this darn thing while it rocked back and forth. But yeah, he does it. He does a great job.
This is one of many scenes where it's shocking to know that he was 22, because he looks like a very skinny 12-year-old. But that aside, he's practicing his balance, and he's getting a little cocky about it, and Mr. Miyagi rocks the boat and says, well, you got to learn how to stay dry before you can fight, and dumps him in the water. And in typical old man humor, he thinks that is the funniest fucking thing he's seen in his life. Like, it almost kills him from laughing so hard at it. It's like the dad that saw somebody fall into a pool or something. But, hey, comedy's comedy.
So Daniel's supposed to be picking Allie up for a date. She had to have dinner with her parents at the country club. They make a big deal about this. And, of course, who's there but Johnny, her ex. Her parents are like, oh, Johnny. And she's like, no. He has this hair. P.S. Do you know who the comedian Demetri Martin is? That's who I think he looks like, just with blonde hair. But here's Daniel, and Jay cracked me up at this scene because he says he looks like he's the valet. He's just walking around in this red coat. But as it would happen in 80s movies, we see Daniel get to sneak through the kitchen with no questions asked and no problem at all. He bumps into a server and ends up with spaghetti sauce all over him. And if you're an Always Sunny fan like I am, you'll know why I'm laughing at this, because that is straight out. I mean, well, no, this happened first, but Sunny definitely borrowed the scene and covered one of the waitstaff in spaghetti sauce like this.
Yeah, this movie obviously had a lot of influence on Mac's real life and fictional involvement in Always Sunny. It's his constant use of karate. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, the whole thing devolves. Daniel's son runs away before he realizes that she wasn't cozying up to Johnny. She was trying to get rid of him. So Johnny was, coming on hard to her. He really put the cunt in country club. And she slugged him for it. But at that point, he missed it. He got the wrong idea about the whole situation. He's pissed. And he ends up at Mr. Miyagi's house. So as Daniel shows up at Mr. Miyagi's house, we realize he's drunk and apparently mourning someone, which we later learn is his wife. And this is a pretty dark scene, but it's important to the character. It gives him a lot of background and fleshes out who he is and where he came from. And to summarize it all, he fought in World War II for the Americans. He was in the, if I'm getting it correct, the 442nd Infantry, which was a real thing. It was comprised mainly of Japanese Americans. And, they reference the internment camps and everything, which is pretty heavy shit for a family movie. I'm sure lots of kids had questions that were very hard to answer as everybody drove home from the theaters in the 1980s. But then we also learned that while in the internment camp, Mr. Miyagi's wife and his son didn't make it through childbirth. So that kind of explains why he's a loner and gives him a little bit more development. And I guess this is probably more, watching it from 40 years in the future. I think that's something they would have to add now to really hammer in that this is a friendship, a mentor relationship, where it's someone that lost their family, found the son that he never got to have, rather than an old man trying to groom a child.
So the other interesting thing about this scene, Mr. Miyagi's drunk in this scene, and the studio didn't want this in here. They wanted to drop it, but they felt like it slowed the pace down, and they didn't fully understand it. But the director, John G. Avildsen, he argued for it. He wanted to stay in because he felt like the scene, it gave Pat like more of a backstory, and it made sense for him. And because of the scene, it ended up getting Pat nominated for an Oscar. So that's pretty cool.
And with that, they continue training. We get more training montage. Daniel's getting better, more balance, getting stronger, so much so that Mr. Miyagi has to don a full catcher uniform. He's got the headgear and the chest pad, even the knee pads and shin guards, because, you never know what that kid's going to do.
So then it's Daniel's birthday, and did they say, he was supposed to be 17, so I assume he's turning 18 here?
He turned 17.
Oh, Jay thinks he's turning 17. I don't know, somewhere in that age range. But he makes a big deal about getting his license, and it's cool to see this because you see the closeness between the two of them and more of the friendship, which I like. Mr. Miyagi obviously cares for him, and Jay, tell him what he gets as a birthday present.
He's got his cake sitting on his crotch. No, I'm just kidding. He actually, he's got that whole lot full of cars, and he lets Daniel know that he can have his pick of the cars, which is mind-blowing, as any teenager would want any free car. And there's a lot of cool cars out there, and he ultimately decides on the 1948 Ford Super Deluxe convertible. And not a big fan of the yellow, but it is a sweet-ass car. And apparently, due to the success of the movie, they actually gave Ralph Macchio this car, which he still has to this day, which I think is awesome. I hope he still drives it.
I really think it would have been funny if he had just said, can I just have the cash instead? I'm not really a fan of yellow. No, it's really sweet. Now, one really funny thing Jay and I both caught, I guess continuity error, is he says, oh shit, I gotta go. I was supposed to meet up with my mom. So then he goes to leave. They do the car thing. He's so stoked about the car. He drives it off, and then he goes to meet Allie instead. Nothing else about the mom. It was just kind of a funny thing. I guess that was his excuse to go meet Allie. Yeah, I'm not real sure, but yeah, we see him go drive off and go meet Allie, and he's super excited about his new fancy yellow car.
So yeah, Mom totally gets blown off. I think that was just something that either happened off screen or they forgot about. But he finds Allie. He's trying to apologize in a kind of shitbag way, but he doesn't realize that she punched Johnny at the country club, which he later learns through one of her friends. Which her friends are real bitches. Like, for her to be such no nice girl I ever knew had such bitch friends. That kind of sticks out to me. But they just don't like Daniel. But one of them finally lets him know what really went down. And he's like, oh, shit, I'm the asshole. So then he goes and really apologizes to her. And then I guess they have their first kiss. And then he lets her drive the car away. So then immediately, again, keeping up with the fast-paced storytelling, we're at the karate tournament where they are very ill-prepared. Like, they show up at the last minute. Everybody's about ready to go. And then, while watching this, we're like, what the hell is Mr. Miyagi stealing from that bag? And why is he holding Allie's hand? And we realize he jacked somebody's black belt out of a duffel bag because I guess he doesn't have any black belts to give Daniel. But that's how he gets his black belt. And we meet up with the Cobra Kai guys in the dressing room. They're all taunting him and talking shit. And this is where the tournament begins. This is the climax.
So yeah, Mr. Miyagi began training Daniel on November 1st, and the tournament took place December 19th. Meaning that Daniel earned his black belt in 48 days. In real life, the average person takes about 4 to 5 years to earn a black belt, so that's pretty impressive.
Hey, so he did catch that fly with chopsticks, but so, there's some innate ability that you can't gauge with time. So the tournament begins. Everyone's pretty clueless on how any of this works. Somehow Allie knows the rules of karate and how it's scored, I guess from dating, the karate bully from Cobra Kai. But anyway, so in that 48 days he became a black belt. He somehow never learned the rules to this, which they explained to him as he's walking on to his first match. But he stumbles a little bit in the beginning, but he almost immediately picks up on it and wins the first fight. And then, we kind of get a montage of fights leading up to the end.
Yeah, so it's a tense final fight scenes. There's a couple of fights going on here, but lots of tension with Kreese, the bad sensei. He's coaching his guys like Johnny and the other assholes to do really bad things, like to leg sweep and do other moves that you're not supposed to do in situations like this. And poor Daniel. Obviously we're rooting for him the whole time. Interesting fact about this is the extras in this crowd got so into watching this that they forgot it was a movie, and they would actually boo William Zabka. His mom was in the extras in the audience there, and she'd have to remind them, that's my son, he's an actor, he's a nice guy, you know, this is a movie, because the audience got so into the fighting scenes.
Which leads us to the actual climax. There is some friction between the Cobra Kai group. Sensei instructs Butch, I believe, to take out Daniel. I guess he doesn't even want him to fight Johnny for some reason. It's like the whole point of the tournament was for them to meet up and fight, but I guess he's afraid that Johnny might lose. So anyway, Butch does some crazy kick to his knee that screws him up and seemingly takes him out of the tournament, and he's, you know, he's stretchered out, he's in the back, and he's, you know, it looks like it's over, and he pretty much begs Mr. Miyagi to, you know, do his pressure point thing to relieve the pain from his knee so he can fight this last fight. And just as they're about to give the trophy to Johnny, Daniel limps out, and he's like, I'm going to fight, and everybody's like, wow, okay, cool. And they have a fight, and it's pretty cool. I don't know the rules of karate, though. Like, most of it seems to follow the point system. During all of this, there's lots of stuff going on, and nobody's getting any points. And I'm just like, huh, okay. But, you know, hey, it's fictional, whatever. And it culminates with, well, we do get the classic sweep the leg line. Kreese tells Johnny to sweep his leg, which he's not all on board with because it's kind of a dick move, I guess, unethical in karate. And he does that, hurts Daniel some more. And it gets to the point where it's pretty much even, and Daniel pulls out the crane kick and kicks Johnny in the face, winning the match. Everybody cheers. Even Johnny is like, hey, I respect him now, hands him the trophy. Everybody's happy. The end. It's a quick fucking ending because that's it.
Yeah, so he was actually, in the original ending, supposed to lose and, like, die right there. No, I'm totally kidding. That's not what happened. No, Ralph Macchio did do a Comic-Con in 2016 where he said that the movie was supposed to end with Daniel being carried off by the crowd after he beats Johnny, but they reshot the ending because they wanted Mr. Miyagi to be smiling at the end. They felt like that was a more satisfying and better ending for the movie, so that's how they ended it.
Speaking of alternate endings, as we talked about this movie and reminisced on it, I realized both of us mix in parts of the second movie as in parts of the first one. And I mean, I've seen both of them a lot. I've probably seen part two more. And the main thing I remembered was part two is like an immediate sequel. Like, as soon as part two comes on, we're still at the end of the tournament from the first one. And I guess that's partially because there was more to this ending where Miyagi confronts Kreese, the bad sensei. They'd already filmed that, so they end up reusing it as the beginning of part two, which makes a little more sense now that I know that. Be talking about more in the near future, I guess, because we are going to bring up part two soon.
Yes, we are, and I cannot wait for that. So, again, Natalie, our Patreon member, is amazing and picked this movie, and I love it so much, and she was so kind and patient with me while I was dealing with my stupid cold, so I took a little extra time. So I will be releasing the second movie very soon. I'd say in the next, I don't know, week or two, I'll try to get that out, and I'm very excited about it. Then we will be jumping over to Cobra Kai soon after that. So, again, Natalie, thank you for this pick. But, yeah, such a good movie. It's funny Jay said that about the second one. I'm kind of the same way. I definitely had seen the first one, but I definitely didn't see it as many times as the second one. So I'm actually super excited to watch the second one because I still was a kid when I watched it. I haven't watched it, in the last 20 plus years. So it'll be interesting to watch that one again. But this was such a fun trip down memory lane. I really enjoyed it. Such a good movie. Such a classic 80s movie. We didn't even talk about the music. Great 80s music in this one. I remember really liking the soundtrack to the second one as well. We'll be talking about that. Yeah, I think that's all we got on this movie. I really hope you enjoyed this recap. Thank you for sticking with us. I love all these behind-the-scene details. I try to give them whenever possible, obviously. I'm trying to do that a lot on the Sex and the City series. We're covering that over on Patreon, so check that out. Jay, tell them about your channel. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on YouTube as Dr. Bad Vibes. Doctor all spelled out, Bad Vibes, it's all one word. And I'll probably try to get something up related to Karate Kid. There weren't many. Well, there's only one video game that I'm aware of. It was released on the original Nintendo, which is a very condensed version of Karate Kid 2, if I'm not mistaken. I did notice in the arcade the big Namco logo on the shotgun game they were playing. I'd never heard of it, and I want to find out more about that. I mean, it doesn't really tie into Karate Kid, but if I can find a way to play that, I will. It's more of a mechanical game, not a video game. But that's what I do, video games. So if you want to see Street Fighter, I've got that, not so much Karate Kid.
So be sure to leave us comments below. Let us know if you love this movie too, if you learned some stuff along the way with us, if you're excited for the second one, and if you're on board with Cobra Kai. Are you guys watching that? Are you wanting to watch it? What are your thoughts on that? So I can't wait to read them all. I hope you guys have a fabulous day. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.